You are listening to the Prosperous Law Podcast. Learn how to reduce stress, have more time, and make more money. Come on in.
I'm Greg McCollum, and I built a 7-figure criminal defense law firm. I formed Prosperous Law to show criminal defense law firm owners who are desperate for success how to grow from under $200,000 to $1 million and beyond. Hi, Greg McCollum here with another edition of Prosperous Law Podcast. At Prosperous Law, what we do is we help teach and train criminal defense lawyers how to basically have a better life. In other words, if you're a criminal defense lawyer and you own your own firm, or you own your own law practice, or you're a solo practitioner and you want to do criminal defense, but you find yourself doing other areas of the law, or if you're a criminal defense lawyer and you do primarily appointed cases, the public defender, indigent type of work, and you want to have more paying clients, and you want to have a better practice, and by that I mean a practice that serves you. It serves you financially, it serves you professionally, and what it does is it makes your life better. It makes the life you have better for you and for your family. But also the effect of this is it also makes life better for your clients. And so in my experience, and certainly what I did and what I see other people doing who take on the work of being a criminal defense lawyer, is they give a lot. They give a lot to their clients. They put a lot of blood and sweat and tears in there for their clients, and it's draining. And there are so many things that you have to deal with. You know, the demands and impatience of judges who, you know, sit in court and expect certain things from you, who are not running a business, who don't have payroll, who don't have bills to pay. They have a government job, and so they're judges, and that's what they do, and they judge you and expect a lot from you. And then you expect a lot from yourself. And it's extremely taxing to be a criminal defense lawyer and someone who goes to court, who helps clients, who gets bogged down and has to go meet somebody at a jail. And if you've never gone to a jail or a prison, which is even worse, to meet with somebody, you really don't know how much time that takes, how taxing that is, how much time is wasted. I remember one time I was going to meet this guy who was serving a prison sentence, and just to get in there and talk to him, and I don't think I was allowed to take my computer in there. I had to go out to the car 2 or 3 times to put things in the car because I could not bring them into the prison room to meet with him. And at one point, as I wasn't being strip searched, but at one point, as I'm emptying my pockets and going through everything, and I'm saying, well, you can't take this in there. You can't take a debit card in there. And then at some point, I'd gone back to my car, I'd come back, and I was emptying my pockets, and I had some cash in my pocket. I just happened to have cash. You know, sometimes it's good to have cash, and so I had a stack of 20s, and the person that was putting me through security said, "You have too many 20s. You can't go in there with that many $20 bills." And so I think rather than ask, well, how many 20s can I take in there, I just went and put all the 20s back in the car. And so these are things you deal with. These are real world things that aren't really depicted anywhere, but they're in your life. So this can be frustrating, to say the least. So how do you make that better? You make that better by making your law firm better and making your law practice better. And I guess a lot of people call a solo practice a law firm. I never did. I would call what I have now a law firm, because it is a law firm, but more importantly, it's a business and operates as a business. So the topic today is, you are the product and result of your decisions and actions. You are the product and the result of your decisions and actions. And your decisions and actions are mostly based on what you think, say, and do. So if your life right now is a stressful nightmare, if your life is something that is extremely difficult for you to even experience, then understand it's the result of the way you think, things you say about yourself, and what you actually do. And there's a saying that if you want to know the cause and solution to all of your problems, look in the mirror. And I don't think that my cousin coined that, obviously, but that's what my cousin said to me one time. And my cousin is somebody who came from, I guess, the best thing you could describe as a broken home. My uncle, his father, I told him one time, we were sitting around talking, and I said, you know, your father life was a country music song. And he started laughing, and he said it truly was. Now, this is somebody, my cousin, who grew up in a single wide trailer stacked up on concrete blocks behind my grandmother's house. Now, my grandmother had spent her entire life working in a cotton mill. Both she and my grandfather, they started working in a cotton mill when it was probably when they were 16 years old, and they worked there until they hit retirement age, which at the time was probably 62, 65, something like that. And my grandmother had a nice house, and she had a couple of pieces of nice furniture, and her house was immaculate. But it was a 2-bedroom house with some little add-ons, and had a little carport thing with a add-on, little metal flat roof over it. And the yard was clean, and it was nice. But it was a 2-bedroom house in the mill town in Easley, where I grew up, where my cousin grew up. So he grew up in this single wide trailer in her backyard. It wasn't actually even in her backyard. It was kind of this overgrown section where the grass wasn't really cut, and there was no shrubbery, and there was maybe some junk laying around, and maybe some other trailers. It was actually the lot behind her lot. And so, his father was married multiple times and was always, getting arrested for not paying child support. And then my father ran a Firestone store, and they had what they called a recap shop, which is where they retreaded tires. So there was this hot, sweaty kind of factory. And when my uncle, who maybe had just got out of jail for not paying his child support or something like that, because my grandmother bailed him out, he would come to work for my dad or something like that. So here's my cousin. So somehow he graduates high school, doesn't end up going to reform school or doesn't get a criminal record. Then he goes to school, he goes to college, and he goes to chiropractic college, and he gets out of chiropractic college, and he opens, a chiropractic office. But then he quickly realizes that the key to this, just like a law firm, is management. And so he transitions that into medical management, and he becomes, he's instead of just being a chiropractor, he hires a doctor, and hires a nurse practitioner, and hires somebody else, maybe a massage therapist. And then the next thing you know, he's got medical doctors working for him, because they, like I was, and like a lot of you are, they're good at what they do, but they don't really know how to run a medical practice. So he's running a medical practice, and that expands and expands and expands to the point to where he becomes very wealthy. Now, interestingly, other than maybe going to maybe a Tony Robbins event or something like that one time, when I would talk to him, I was always amazed by him because he didn't really participate in any kind of coaching. And one of my mentors, David Nagel, said, some people don't need it. Some people can just step out there and do it. And for those people, they don't need to spend the time and energy and money on coaching. They just make the right steps. And so one time I was talking to him, and I don't know how it came up, but maybe somebody was complaining at something that my cousin never does. And I've noticed this about successful people. And all of the successful people I know, when I think about all the conversations with them, it's interesting because I never hear any complaint. And part of that is, they're heroes, not victims. And I can talk about that a little bit. But my cousin said that when an employee or somebody is complaining, and he said he would look at them and say, listen, do you want to know the cause of all your problems? And of course, everybody's like, yeah, what's the cause? What are the causes of my problems? If you're some kind of guru and you know the cause of my problems, yes, tell me, I want to know. And he said, do you want to know the cause of your problems, but also, do you want to know the potential cause or the solution? Do you want to know the cause of all your problems and the solution to all your problems? Do you want to see that? And of course they want to see it. And he said, if you want to know the cause of all your problems and the solution to all your problems, look in the mirror. And so I asked him, I said, well, when you said that to them, how did they respond? And he said, they just look at me like I have 3 heads. And so people don't believe that, right? And people think that things happen to them, and things do happen to them. Things happen to all of us. I saw a study one time, a psychology study, where they said, because, we have these thousands of thoughts every day, and that 70% of a human being's thoughts are negative, 70%. And so I remember when I read that, I thought, well, that's interesting. I'm a positive person. I don't have those negative thoughts. But once I started paying attention to it, and once I started to try to have some awareness, I noticed that that's exactly what happens. When I get up in the morning, or when I'm going somewhere, or I'm getting ready to do something, what I'd find myself doing is focusing on the problem. I was focusing on maybe 1 or 2 things in my life weren't going well, and that's what I was, quote, worrying about. And never mind the fact that 7 or 8 things are going very well. It couldn't be any better. Maybe I just completed a project. Maybe I had, met my running schedule. Maybe, I felt good. It's cold outside, but my heat is working. I have running water. I have a bed to sleep in. I have food. I have all these luxuries. I have this huge, big, expensive Mercedes SUV that I could ride around in. I've got nice clothes that I was able to afford. My children are going to college, and that's taken care of. And all of these things are just terrific. So, but then I find myself thinking, well, this one thing didn't go well, or maybe we're having some issues at the office or something. Maybe a client wasn't happy. So that was my focus. I was focusing on all of that and ignoring everything that was good. And these kind of negative thoughts, they beat you down. They change your life in a negative way. And so, and I'm not talking about the power of positive thinking. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just being aware of what you're focusing on. And maybe that is positive thinking, but I don't think positive thinking comes across like that. It's less about positive thinking, because I'm not saying that I'm going to think, well, I'm just going to think positive thoughts. What I am going to try to do is show some gratitude for the things that are going well. And I'm also going to try to think about what's in front of me and what I need to concentrate on versus let these negative thoughts creep in and start to destroy my mindset and my day. So you get to this idea where you meet somebody and they say, "Who are you? It's nice to meet you. Who are you?" And so if you ask yourself, "Who am I?" What's the answer? And so what do we typically say? Well, my name is Greg McCollum. That's who I am. Is that really who I am? And then we go through our personal history. Well, I was born in this town, and I went to this high school, and I went to this college, and I went to this law school, then I started working here. Well, okay, that's true. That's my history. That shows what I've done, and that tells you something about who I am. But who am I? It's kind of this existential question. It's like, who am I? Why am I here? I think, and I've been through this a lot, and I've been taught this, and I've been to school on this, and I've had discussions about this. And I do really think that when you give your history, that's not really who you are. Now, I know that it helped shape who you are, but if you look at people that grew up in the same town that you grew up in and went to the same elementary school through high school that you went to, and who had parents that weren't much different than your parents and had the same economic status that you had, but yet turned out very differently and have very different lives. I think, honestly, what it comes down to for me is if you say, who am I? Who you are is basically, what do you think? Do you think that you're a blessed person? Do you think you're a successful person? Do you think you're somebody who can solve problems? Do you think you're somebody who's going to have success? Or do you think nothing good ever happens to me? I see these other lawyers that seem to be doing better than me. And then you start making up these stories that they were born into a better situation. They had more connections. They had they had a boost up in life. And I'm not saying that stuff doesn't exist. It does exist. But that's not really who I am. Who I am is what I think about and what I believe, and then that determines what I do. And most of who I'm going to be is going to be based on what I do. And there's this idea of integrity. And I've been taught that basically all human beings have integrity in their own mind. And you hear people say it, like if you're talking to somebody who you're representing as a criminal lawyer and they've done something which is not good, like perhaps they committed a burglary and broke in someone's house, or they did something worse, like assaulted somebody, or they in their business they ran a scam and defrauded somebody, then what do they say? Well, that's not who I am. And then they give justifications for the reasons they did it. And the justifications could be anything. It could have been lack of money. It could have been because the business wasn't treating them fairly. Certainly I hear this from embezzlers where, well, I was working too hard and they weren't paying me what I was supposed to get paid, or I was intimidated to ask for my fair rate, so I started skimming. In their mind, they have integrity. And they're not out of integrity. In their mind, they're in integrity. And this is something that we all deal with. And if you've represented people, you see it all the time. for the courts and the judges and stuff, and for the prosecutors, they just see them as excuses and things that basically the people are lying about. But there is a thing there where people have to justify who they are and what they do. Now, the other thing is, I was, if you read my book, From Chaos to Control, it's a series of things that go wrong in my life that gets me to the point of where I am now. And I remember recently I was talking to my mother. My mother is, I think, 89 years old right now. And she was lamenting the fact that when I went through these things, I didn't really tell her about it. And she said, you didn't tell me about it because you didn't want me to worry. And I'm so sad you went through these things. And I said, Mom, I went through them, but I think everybody goes through it. And we all go through it. And I don't even think my life was difficult. I did some things and some things didn't work, and then medical things happened and problems happened. But when I talk to people and listen to them and take time to listen to them, what I usually find is that everybody goes through it. And so the key is not what happened to you. It's what are you going to do about it? And sometimes there's a time where you can't do anything about it. You just have to suffer through it for a period of time, because you can't make it better. If your wife has a massive stroke like mine does and she's in the hospital, you can't go, down the hall and have some positive thoughts and make it all better. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is over the course of the time that you're going through that, but also when you're coming out of that, is how do you respond to it? And there are basically two ways to respond. One is to take this idea that you're a victim of circumstances, which is, this happened to me. This happened to me. And so now I'm a victim of it. And that kind of blocks me in and cripples me. The other view of taking is, and I wrote down here the hero, but not necessarily a hero, but I just didn't have a better term for it. But the empowered person is looking at it more like, these are my circumstances, so I will do this. I will go do this because of my circumstances. And it's the difference between having a suffering mindset and a suffering victimization versus life gets tough sometimes. Sometimes things happen that are almost unbearable, and I'm going to respond in this courageous way. I'm going to not have a suffering, reactive life. I'm going to do what I can about it. And let's say that it's terrible and I can't make it better. I cannot fix it. A lot of things that cannot be fixed. But what am I going to do in response to it? Am I going to give up, or am I going to keep going and see if I can find a way? And I hear it from so many people's mouths. And I think about all the people I've talked to over the years I've been alive, and I mean everybody. People that are, fixing my plumbing, people that are, maybe an electrician working in my house, maybe a client that owns a business, maybe somebody maybe an Uber driver where they're talking. And I read somewhere by this book I read where the person said, I could talk to you and in 5 minutes know everything about you and know what your level of fulfillment and success is in terms of basically how much money you make, how successful you are, how fulfilled you are and how good your life is, because I'll get all that in 5 minutes. And I think what they're talking about is just this. And if you listen to people around you and they're just complaining about what happened to them, that's very different from talking to somebody who's a very successful entrepreneur or business owner who's just talking about life and, oh, by the way, this happened, and then it's nothing really. It's nothing. They're just problem solvers, and that's what business is if you go into business because you don't want to have problems, then you're making a mistake, because people pay you to solve problems. So if you want to know the cause and the solution to all your problems, look in the mirror. I have another section in here about where do you stop and based in fear, but we're running out of time, so I'll have to pick that up at another time. But I'm going to leave you with this quote. There's this guy named Leland Van De Wall, and he said, "The degree to which a person can grow is directly proportional to the amount of truth they can accept about themselves without running away." The degree to which a person can grow is directly proportional to the amount of truth they can accept about themselves without running away. So as you listen to this and think about this, if the things I said about being a victim and it's not what happens to you, it's how you act, and you think that that's just some rah-rah bullshit and I've had a charmed life, then I'd say one or two things. One, read my book, and then come back and see if you still have that opinion. And also look inside and determine what about that is triggering you. Because if you can't accept that truth about yourself, then you are running away. And I would encourage you not to run away, but to become aware of these thoughts and your actions and how you respond to them. So that's all for now. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time on the Prosper at Law podcast.
If you want to know more, go to prosperatlaw.com. We show criminal defense law firm owners how to reduce stress, have more free time, and make more money. Thanks for listening.